As promised, guys, I want to show you a little bit about how to grind a blade with an angle grinder. Now, there's about 100,000 ways to do this. Different techniques provide different results, and a lot of things that you can do to cheat a little bit. But for this demonstration, we're going to be using a blank for one of our Model 1s. This is out of 1/8 inch steel. And the first thing that I want to tell you about is that if you're kind of junkyard stealing it, right? If you've got like a file blank that's 3/16 or 1/4 inch, understand that there is a phenomenal amount more steel in something that's 3/16, 7 inch than 1/8, okay? It's deceptive, it's tricky. So what ends up happening is when you're on thinner steels, you have a tendency to actually grind too much into the edge. And on the thicker steel, especially 1/4 inch, you tend to kind of round it over like an axe grind. Regardless of which grind you're going after, you want to try to keep it just as flat as possible. Flat is happy. Now, here's the thing, and I'm kind of amazed at how many different versions of grinds are out there. When we first started, you know, there was only a handful of grinds. They were very distinct. Well, now everybody that's got a marketing scab has got, like, you know, the modified V Jupiter's Uranus grind. Forget all that. Don't think that you're going to jump out and make your Bushcraft Scandi grind or your High V Flats 80 CRV2 grind. Just put that to the side. Just put that to the side for right now, okay? You want to have reasonably flat sides, and you don't necessarily want to come all the way up to the spine, especially on thinner blades. The area that's at the top of that spine is a minuscule, I'll get it right in a minute, amount of steel, and it's very hard to get that pretty line without some type of jig or the proper equipment. So don't go for perfection. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that you don't grind so much of a bevel that the two bevels touch, okay? If you do that, you actually change the profile of the blade. In the perfect world, you want to leave about 1/16 of an inch in the middle. That will be, you'll harden and temper, and then that can actually be sharpened away for your final edge. But you don't want those two sides to touch, and err on the thicker side. There's an old saying, he who a good edge will win must first forge thick and then grind thin, okay? So there we are. Now, when you get real fancy, you can end up with this stuff right here with this Dykem steel blue, and you can see that we actually have a couple of knives that are actually done out with this. And then we have a scribe, a tool that allows us to mark the edge of how high we want that grind. Now, if you've got thick steel, you can actually put that mark, the center mark, on the edge. But for us, we can actually control where it meets a little bit better by marking it on the sides and running our grind lines to it. So just, that's advanced, okay? Now, so the other thing, if you're going to be using an angle grinder, first thing, you have got to lock your blade down. If you'll take a quick look at this, you can see that I've got 2 clamps on this. Do not think that you're going to put 1 clamp on this butt end and you're going to be safe. That thing is going to jackknife and swing. Always have a minimum of 2 clamps on your knife. And you can also see why it's so important to have a table like this that you can get up under it and clamp it down too. When you're doing this work has to be secured. If it's flopping around, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, to the angle grinder itself. I think this is a 4 amp angle grinder. This is a 4.5 disc, and this is what back in the day was referred to as a tiger disc, or it's a flat wheel. And let me see if I can't get a fresh one so you guys can see what we're talking about. You guys can see that there are little bits of sandpaper that have been glued together. These are normally 36 grit, at least the ones that I buy, and they're glued down to a pad. Now, these things are super aggressive right out of the gate, but they build a lot of heat and they wear out pretty quickly. Once this thing kind of breaks in, you get that new off of it, it cuts very slowly. Most of the time, these guys are used for finishing up a grind, but on this 1/8 of an inch, we can kind of get away with using just it. But if you're doing like 3/16 or 1/4 of an inch, you probably want to start with a grinding rock and then move to this. And one of the reasons is because the rock leaves a very rough, uneven finish. But because this sandpaper's got a little bit of give, this will make a really pretty finish. It will blend a lot of stuff out, and it will even make like the ugliest of grinds smooth out and look a little bit better. So, now, let's do a little bit of grinding here. I'm going to start on this side. I think I'm chucked up here. Yep, good to go. And what I want you to watch for is how very carefully, look, you're going to look where I've got the end of the angle grinder, and I've got a hand grab on this. So what I'm doing is I'm not doing this number. I've actually got it anchored against my body as a reference point, and I'm basically going to paint this blade. Now, most of the time where somebody's going to have a problem, it's going to be in the fact that they're going to get a little aggressive, it's going to be getting good to them, and they're going to grind too much. So one of the things you want to do is swap back and forth, especially if you don't have marks to follow, to try to keep everything kind of even. But if you can look, you can see we've got a pretty good little grind going. So I'm going to flip over, I'm going to do a little bit on this side and see where we end up. Now again, you're going to have to change positions on this bad boy. Now, hopefully, those of you who are more experienced than everybody else caught the mistake that I just made. And I kind of made that mistake on purpose because I want to show you something. Now, what happened is that when I did the initial grind, drop that right there like a professional. When I did the initial grind, the blade was like this, and I was reaching over the back to the front. But this one, I was on the front doing this number. If you look, you can see that the grind looks considerably different. And that's because I was in a different position grinding it. One of the things that you want to try to do is make certain that if you're trying to get both sides as close as humanly possible, recreate how you're grinding it on both sides. If you're grinding over the back of the blade, do the same thing on the other side. So what I should have done is had this piece this way, and attacked it from this side. Now, it's still going to be a little bit of a touch to get it even. That's just going to come with time and hand and eye coordination, but it gives you a much better chance of recreating one side for what's on one side, what's on the other side. So let me take another pass, and the good news is I can clean that up. If you guys are wondering why I'm wearing goggles, it's the only damn thing I can find. I can't find any of my other safety glasses, so we're getting goggle Trent, which don't you laugh, you bastards. Now, if you look here, and you compare it to that side, that's not too damn bad. If you look down, now we're still a little thick on that edge, but we're good to go. This is something that can be worked with. We've got a little bit more than the 1/16 of an inch on that end, especially right down here around the initial plunge point. But all of this can be worked with. That's a rather clean grind for doing it with an angle grinder. Once this is hardened and tempered, then you can go and actually clean up the edge or put that sharp edge on there. You're dealing with some precision measurements. When you guys get down to worrying about 1/16 of an inch, these are precise measurements. Don't laugh at my hair neither, you bastards. So these are precise measurements, okay? And that's why we have precision tooling. And even though a 2x72-inch sander would not be precision by any machinist standard, it's way more precise than standing there hoping your hip and your fat ass actually holds everything in place and you can repeat it. So, again, modify what you can expect. But something like this, cleaned up, is not going to be a bad knife. And this is when you can actually come in with your files and sandpaper. You can use the grinding rock, you can use the flat wheel and rough this guy out. And now, if you've got that extra time, you can come in with a draw knife or sandpaper and actually really clean this up and make it nice and pretty. All of these things are things that you can do, but it starts with the angle grinder. Guys, I hope this tip has helped. Send me your questions down below and I'll get on answering them. You guys be good.